So that is something that really is useful if you're looking for a very specific, localized area. Now, we do have a gentleman in this state who is trying to see an effort to use LiDAR to map all the stone walls in the state and have a stone wall map of the state of New Hampshire. And he knows about, of course, the blister rust maps. He knows about lotting plans. He knows about aerial photographs. But he's hoping that maybe flights of LiDAR, and there have been some flights already in the Merrimack River Valley, the seacoast, parts of the Connecticut River Valley have been flown LiDAR. So he's quite excited about that possibility. So we'll see if anything comes of that. Just a few other things to talk about. And one is town lines. Town lines, we saw, got surveyed in the early mid-1700s when they were first laid out. That information was reiterated in another set of maps that I'm going to show you over here called the 1805 maps. But there is a statute, and has been a statute since the beginning of the colonies, that requires selectmen to perambulate once every 7 years the town lines. The purpose of which is to make sure that the bounds that mark the actual location on the surface of the earth are still intact, and if not, get replaced properly. And so we still get receipt of perambulation reports. This is one that came in the last couple of, well, I'd say it came in 3 weeks ago. I think it came in quite recently. And he's talking about fence by the town line and a stone wall and the town line between Ware and Dunbarton, X number of rods, and then continuing past the wall by a wire fence, X number of rods, to a point that is north 43 degrees and 3.24416 minutes east. And so what he's done is he's carried a handheld Garmin or something of the sort out there, followed the traditional perambulation, and then taken an observation of the location of that bound. So more and more I'm seeing towns including handheld GPS accuracy. A few are going to surveyor precision accuracy by hiring surveyors to actually do this. But at least we're getting handheld precision. So we're plus or minus 30, plus or minus 50 feet, but you can at least get out there.
Do they mark, do they note what the error is from the device on the...
When they ask me, I recommend it.
Yeah.
There's no requirement that they do any specific thing, just that they report. But what I do is I try to encourage them to say, look, tell us what you used. You know, is this a Garmin EZ 40A, or whatever? And what was the accuracy that was showing on that? What was the precision that was showing on that? Just to give us an idea, so we know what we're dealing with. It's a valid reading, as long as we know what the precision is. So when they ask me, that's what I encourage. They don't always ask me. But what one gentleman recently did is he put this notebook together and said, look, we've perambulated all of the Enfield town lines, and now we've got some information about what we perambulated. We'll tell you the perambulation records, and here's how it was described in the perambulation of 1786. Here's how that same corner was described in the perambulation of 1814. Here's the perambulation in 1873. Here's the description from 1941. Here's 1948. Here's 1957, and so on. And then he's also given us a photograph of what it looks like. And he's got as well USGS sheets that show where it is, so you know how to get to it.
That's Enfield?
This is the town of Enfield. Which, you know, he came in and donated a copy. He said, this is not a perambulation report. And he's right, it's not technically a perambulation report. But it's a lot of great geographical information about town lines that will serve Enfield and all the surrounding towns to good stead for years to come, I hope. So I just wanted to mention that to you, that we've got these types of things. We talked about the Masonian proprietors. These are maps that were made by and for the Masonian proprietors. For those grants of towns of land, these are the actual maps.
These are the actual maps.
These are the actual
The
maps.
two sides, because they're in a
sides.
window.
Exactly.
Wow. So what do these date to?
1700s typically. Some of them may be as recent as the proprietors were in business as late as the 1820s, I think. So some of these may be as late as 1820s, but most of them were 1700s. So a lot of these will give you geographical information from very early on, a very early plotting plan.
What town is that? Can you read it?
The plan of a tract of land called Monadnock Number 6, measured and made pursuant to an agreement with the Thomas Packer Esquire, following Veast. So this would be the town of Nelson, if it's Thomas Packer, a.k.a. Packersfield.
So would the proprietors watch and see where stuff kind of grew, and then they'd say, oh, we're going to say that piece of land is valuable, so that's our percentage, and then...
Typically what happened is in the divvying out, that group of people called the township proprietors or the grantees would make provisions, and they'd say, look, you know, Peter, you're going to draw first, so Peter draws first, and then I will draw second, and then Carol will draw third, and they would then also have someone draw for one proprietor, now for another proprietor, now for another proprietor. And the Masonian proprietors were well aware that in each town they had these parcels. They kept their own inventories of what they owned. Now, what I find interesting, and you may find it interesting as well, Peter, is that they ended up with two very large chunks of land that were sort of leftover wasteland. One was in the Alton, Center Barnstead area. One was in the Antrim, Deering, Francistown, Hancock, Greenfield area. And these were called society land. And the Masonian proprietors didn't bother to grant them to a group of township proprietors. They just divided amongst themselves. So Antrim, for example, is made up of 4 great rights of the 13 proprietors. By the time they actually got it, they were up to 20 great rights, and 4 of those great rights are now Antrim. 5 of them are now Deering. Parts of 5 of them are now Hancock. So it's an anomaly in the typical situation. We just happen to live in the middle of it.
Right.
But again, they were well aware of what they had for parcels of land, where they were, And what would typically happen is John Smith would come in from the boonies and say, where is, Mr. Wentworth, and I need to see if he would sell me a piece of land. And they'd say, what piece of land are you talking about? Well, up in Cornish, I want to buy a piece of land, it's lot number 3, and all the neighbors tell me that you own it. Would you sell it to me? Okay, I'll write out a deed. Where's my money? It's typically that way, and then they would check it off. I no longer own that one. Don't have to worry about that. And the way the taxes worked at the time, non-residents didn't pay taxes. And there was a reason for that. It's because all these guys lived down in Portsmouth. They were non-residents. So if you lived in town, you paid taxes because you were getting the benefit. Well, so were they, but they wanted that off the record.